Welcome back everyone to part 2 of the Evelyn the Covetous budget build. A short recap. Evelyn the Covetous has Flash, and whenever she or another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of each player's library with a collection counter on it. Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with a collection counter on it if it was exiled by an ability you control. You may spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. We're going to continue with Blood Hypnotist. Blood Hypnotist can't block, and whenever you sacrifice one or more blood tokens, target creature can't block this turn. This ability triggers only once each turn. With blood tokens, you sacrifice a blood token and discard a card, and then you get to draw a card. While Blood Hypnotist is on the field, you not only draw a card because of the blood tokens, but you can stop another creature from being able to block you in the process. Next up we have Blood Tyrant. He has Flying and Trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player loses 1 life. Put a +1/+1 counter on him for each 1 life lost this way. And whenever a player loses the game, put 5 +1/+1 counters on him. For each one of your turns, you get to add +1/+1 counters to Blood Tyrant depending on how many players are still in the game. So 4 players would mean 4 additional counters. It's a high costing mana creature, but you get to make him stronger as time passes. Blood Mad Vampire. Whenever Blood Mad Vampire deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And it has Madness for 1 red and 1 mana of any color, meaning that you can discard it into exile and cast it for 1 mana less than its ordinary mana cost. If we go back to Blood Hypnotist ability, if you have a blood token on the field, you can discard Blood Mad Vampire, sacrifice a blood token, draw a card, then play Blood Mad Vampire from exile, save 1 mana while you're doing so, and stop an opponent's creature from being able to block you. Then we have Cormella Glamour Thief. She has haste, and you can pay 1 mana, tap and add 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red to your mana pool. But you can only use it to play instances and sorceries. And when she leaves the battlefield, you can return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Then we have Duskmantle Seer. It has Flying, and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player reveals the top card of their library, loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost, then puts it into their hand. Although you're helping your opponents draw, if they draw something that isn't a land or a spell that costs 0 mana, they lose life points. If I butcher this next name, please forgive me and let me know in the comments. Etrata the Silencer. Etrata can't be blocked, and whenever she deals combat damage to a player, exile target creature that player controls and put a hit counter on it. That player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them. Etrata's owner shuffles Etrata into their library. Although you have to shuffle her back into your library, you can possibly bring her back and you get a free shuffle just in case you need it. Not to mention, you get to save her if someone decides to wipe the board. Then we have Gluttonous Guest. When this creature enters, create a blood token. And whenever you sacrifice a blood token, you gain 1 life. As you've seen before, blood tokens do come in handy with your other creature's abilities. For example, using them in tandem with Blood Hypnotist and Blood Mad Vampire. Mari, the Quill. Whenever a creature an opponent controls takes a dirt nap, you exile it with a hit counter on it. Assassins, mercenaries, and rogues you control have dirt nap touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. If you do, draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens. If you have Mari and Etrata, then you're adding more hit counters to your opponent's creatures, which gives you a higher chance of your opponent losing the game. And if you choose to remove a hit counter, then you get to draw an extra card and create 2 treasure tokens for each assassin, merc, or rogue that hits an opponent. If I butcher this next name, again, please forgive me and let me know in the comments. Rakish Air. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So, any vampire that deals damage to a player gets stronger and stronger. Now, we have Vampire Socialite. She has Menace. And when she enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. As long as an opponent lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Not only can she only be blocked by one or more creatures, but she buffs all of your other vampires. Each turn that you summon a new one or create a vampire token, it automatically gets stronger as long as you drain life from an opponent before they enter the field. And whenever you deal non-combat damage to a player, her ability triggers. And on top of that, you have creatures with flying, a creature that can't be blocked, and a creature that can stop an opponent's creatures from blocking you, which makes it easier for you to be able to trigger it. Here's another name that I might butcher. Vampire Scrivener has flying, and whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on her. Meaning that if you lose or gain life points from any ability you control, or if someone else causes you to lose life points, she gets stronger. Next up we have Valdarin Pariah. She has flying. You can sacrifice 3 other creatures to transform her, and you can cast her for her madness cost and save yourself 2 mana in the process. Similarly to Blood Mad Vampire, you can discard her to trigger a blood token and then cast her for a lower mana cost. After you sacrifice 3 creatures, she transforms into Abolisher of Bloodlines. She still has flying, but when she transforms into Abolisher of Bloodlines, target opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. So you can create vampire tokens, sacrifice them to transform her, and then you can make 3 of your opponent's creatures take a much needed dirt nap. Then we have Wedding Security. Whenever Wedding Security attacks, you may sacrifice a blood token, and if you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on him and draw a card. Which means that you can get the same effect from sacrificing blood tokens without discarding a card anytime he attacks, while making him stronger at the same time. If Blood Hypnotist is still on the field, you can also stop another creature from being able to block you because you sacrifice a blood token. Now we have Phyrexian Arena. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. But because you're playing with vampires and you're constantly gaining life points, you won't miss out on anything. Especially if Vampire Scrivener is on the field at the same time, because once Phyrexian Arena is triggered, Vampire Scrivener gets stronger. Retribution of the Ancients. Pay 1 black mana and you can remove X +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. With creatures that constantly get +1/+1 counters, you can trigger this ability and use it to relieve an opponent of a creature that they control. For example, Blood Tyrant and Vampire Scrivener. If they've been buffed 5 times, you can take 5 counters away from them, remove a creature from your opponent's side of the field, and then buff them again later on. Sanguine Bond. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So imagine, you have a vampire with lifelink dealing damage. You gain life and drain that much from an opponent. Or whenever another one of your abilities are triggered causing you to gain life, you can drain that too. Now, what would a blue deck be without counterspells? We have Censor. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 mana. Imagine your opponent taps all of their mana and then you counter their spell. It also has cycling for 1 blue mana, so you can discard it to draw an extra card. Then we have Disdainful Stroke. Counter target spell will convert a mana cost 4 or greater. This is especially useful if you're playing against someone who uses green. 9 times out of 10, they have creatures that cost a lot of mana to play and can deal a large amount of damage. This next one is one of my personal favorites. Negate. Counter target non-creature spell. It only costs 2 mana and you can counter any non-creature spell that can be countered. Now we have Quench. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 mana. It only costs 2 mana to play, and it's probably best to use to either force an opponent to spend extra mana or risk losing a card that they need to play, or to counter when they don't have the mana to stop you. Spell Pierce. Counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2 mana. Ionize. Counter target spell, and it deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. Not only do you stop them from playing something that they need, but they take damage in the process. Fatal Push. Destroy target creature if it has mana value 2 or less. However, it has an ability called Revolt. Destroy that creature if it has mana value 4 or less instead if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn. So, you can relieve an opponent of a creature that they control if you lost a permanent. Unalive. Destroy target creature. Blasphemous Act. It ordinarily costs 9 mana in total to cast, but it costs 1 less mana of any color for each creature on the battlefield. It doesn't have to be on your side of the battlefield either. It deals 13 damage to each creature, just in case you need to wipe the board. Then we have Blood Tribute. It has a kicker ability. If you tap an untapped vampire you control, then you can trigger its entire second ability. Target opponent loses half their life rounded up. If it was kicked, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Cruel Ultimatum. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, then loses 5 life. You return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, then gain 5 life. This is a good way to deal damage to an opponent and their strategy, while returning a creature from your graveyard. Day of Black Sun. Each creature with mana value X or less loses all abilities until end of turn. Destroy those creatures. The X cost depends on how much mana you choose to spend while you cast this spell on top of the 2 black mana that you need to play it. It's a board wipe that can take away Indestructible. For this next one, if I butcher the name again, forgive me and let me know in the comments. Exsanguinate. Each opponent loses X life, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Similar to Day of Black Sun, it has an X cost. The more mana you spend to cast this, the more life points you gain. In Garruk's Wake. Destroy all creatures you don't control and planeswalkers you don't control. Mana-wise, it's expensive, but it's a good board wipe, and it only affects what you don't control. Now we have Mass Mutiny. For each opponent, gain control of up to 1 target creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. So, you can take an opponent's creature, attack them with it, then play something that requires a sacrifice. Sacrifice their creature instead of returning it to their side of the field. So that way, you don't have to sacrifice your own. Now we have Walk the Plank. Destroy target non-merfolk creature. I haven't run across that many people that actually use merfolk creatures, so this is still a good destruction spell in my opinion. Blade of the Blood Chief. It's an equipment artifact. Whenever a creature takes a dirt nap, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. If it's a vampire, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it instead, equipped for 1 mana. Whenever an opponent's creature or one of your creatures takes a dirt nap, whichever one is equipped with this blade gets even stronger. Chalice of Life. Tap it, you gain 1 life, and if you have at least 10 more life than your starting life total, transform this artifact. So if you have more than 40 life points, once this is on the field, you transform it into Chalice of Unalived. Tap it and target player loses 5 life. A great way to drain life points from an opponent each turn. Glass Cast Heart. Whenever 1 or more vampires you control attack, create a blood token. Pay 1 black mana, tap and pay 1 life. create a 1/1 white and black vampire token with lifelink. And you can pay 2 black mana, tap and sacrifice Glasscast Heart and 13 blood tokens. Each opponent loses 13 life and you gain 13 life. This is a great way to generate tokens and to gain life points. Sanguine Statuette. When Sanguine Statuette enters the battlefield, create a blood token. Whenever you sacrifice a blood token, you may have Sanguine Statuette become a 3/3 vampire artifact creature with haste until end turn. So, you can turn this into a creature anytime you sacrifice a blood token. Sinister Monolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Tap it, pay 2 life, and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. Not only does this help you gain life, but it's a good way to draw cards in a pinch. Well of Lost Dreams. Whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. Because you continuously gain life, you can pay this cost and get to draw even more cards. Since your commander has blue, red, and black, we have 9 basic lands of each color, and of course we have split lands. Bloodfell Caves enters tapped. When it enters, you gain 1 life. Rakdos Guildgate. It enters the battlefield tapped. Temple of Epiphany enters the battlefield tapped and you scry 1. Izet Guildgate enters tapped. Dimir Guildgate enters tapped. And Dismal Backwater enters tapped and you gain 1 life. I was able to create this deck for a total of $47.58, keeping it just under the $50 limit. Not including shipping, since you can buy individual cards from different websites or shops that you can visit in person. You may even be able to trade with other people so you don't have to spend money. Let me know what you would add to this deck. What would you like to see next? Let me know in the comments. That's all I have for you today. Stay tuned for the next build. Thanks for watching.